My name is Chris Shaw, I'm the chairman of the Shorncliffe Trust. We're here at Shorncliffe Cemetery, which houses over 600 of the fallen, and it's been a military encampment from around about the 1790s and is still an active military base today. We had over time, they believe, around 650,000 Canadians come and call Shorncliffe their home. 300 of them are still here today in our cemetery. When the Canadians really came over here in numbers in 1916, they could hear what was going on the Western Front. They could hear the guns of the Somme. That must have made the young men who are here doing their training a little bit more focused. They recreated the Western Front here at Shorncliffe. Trenches, they even built a mine, pillboxes, everything that these Canadian soldiers needed to succeed in the Western Front at VIMEO was practiced here beforehand. The route to the Western Front was Shorncliffe, Boulogne, and then down to Arras, and then on to VIMEO and onward. Here at Shorncliffe was based not only the care for the men, but also the care of the horses. We had a very famous hospital here, the Shorncliffe Hospital, is just below us towards the seafront, and the hospital had been there in that position since around about the 1800s. Obviously it's very small. What was different was technology. Shorncliffe was connected to the rest of Kent and the rest of England via the railways, and we know that the railways were used to transport men from Folkestone Harbour to Shorncliffe and then onwards to such places as Orpington and the famous Ontario Hospital there. I was told many years ago by another historian who said to me, "Chris, you are so lucky." He said to me, in Belgium and France, they only have them when they're dead. Here at Shorncliffe, you had the boys when they're alive, and that's the story that we love to tell.
I think there is so much social history that goes with a number of men, women, nurses, all of the ancillary staff that support an army, and they live here for years, and so those connections are made. I discovered that not only are we connected through Canada Day and through the people here who never made it home, that 1,100 brides went back with the Canadian Expeditionary Forces in 1919, and one of those was my great aunt. So she was one of 5 daughters. Ethel was the eldest of the daughters, and she married a gentleman by the name of Harry White. So from 1919, letters passed, but the only time that we saw her and Harry, who was still alive, was in the 1970s. It was lovely to reconnect with them, and it was a very special connection now that I feel with Shorncliffe for our family.
And that was in 1917, a spring bank holiday. It's a glorious day. It was a Friday afternoon, and there was a German airplane raid, which was meant to go to London, but because of fog, turned around and bombed other towns and cities in Kent. And they came over and they bombed Shorncliffe because that was an army base, and then they bombed Folkestone. Sadly, without warning, without any alarms going off, bombs fell on Folkestone, and they fell on the high street as mums and kids were out shopping for the long weekend. Shorncliffe was hit, but it was what happened next. Camp sent down heavy lifting equipment, they sent down medics, soldiers, doctors, surgeons to help out. What happened that day down in Folkestone, we know that some of the surgeons saved people's lives and brought them back to Shorncliffe Hospital. Their relatives still live in Folkestone today because of that, because of decisions made by Canadian surgeons and doctors that day. One of the saddest stories, though, is young Private Yeo here. He was engaged to a local girl. He was killed by an unexploded bomb at Shorncliffe, which is tragic. She had given him a gold locket beforehand as part of the engagement, but when he passed away, she wasn't allowed to have the locket back. She wasn't married to him, so had no legal claim on the gift of the heart that she'd given him. It went back to Canada, to his parents. In regimental diaries, it is noted that as a young girl follows the funeral cortege to here, behind all the soldiers, and lays flowers on the grave. Well, in 1919, after the end of World War I, local people, local parties, newspapers realised that the Canadian boys were never going home. They were never going to see their families again. So the local people said, you know what, on every Canada Day, we'll adopt them. They'll be our boys. And it's not adults that put the flowers on the graves. It's local children who put the flowers on all the Canadian graves every Canada Day, and they will do forever. And it is beautiful because it is that connection with the younger generation to an event 100 years ago. And we know that kids who are laying flowers this year, their parents have done it, and their grandparents have done it, and their great-grandparents have done it. That is a fantastic international connection between two communities.